Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Gopanandi Hari Hari Bol. Okay. Hare Krishna, everybody. On this wonderful appearance day of Lord Nityananda Ram, we're going to be sharing a little bit of readings from the Chaitanya Charitamrita about Lord Nityananda, and also I'd like to read from the Chaitanya Bhagavat the pastime of Jagai Marai, which is so important for us. So I'll begin by offering obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and Spiritual Master. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshurun Midatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My Spiritual Master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So we'll begin with a wonderful prayer to Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda from the very beginning of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, text number 2 of the Adi Leela. Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gododehe Pushpavanto Chitro Shando Tamonodo. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Shri Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are like the sun and the moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Goda to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. And then one verse from the Chaitanya Bhagavat describing Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya. This one, give me a second here. Sorry. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. Ajanulambita bhujo kanaghavadato sankirtanaya kipitaro kamalaya taksho vishwambaro jujavaro yugadharma palo vande jagat priyakaro karunavataro. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Nityananda Prabhu, whose arms extend down to their knees, who have golden yellow complexions, and who inaugurated the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Their eyes resemble the petals of a lotus flower. They are the maintainers of the living entities, the best of the Brahmins, the protectors of the religious principle for the age, Harinam Sankirtan, the benefactors of the universe, and the most merciful of all incarnations. So we have a wealth of information about Lord Nityananda. Srila Prabhupada has given us this Chaitanya Charitamrita, and in the 5th chapter of the Adi Leela, there's an extensive description of the tattva of Lord Nityananda, who he is, what his manifestation is. We understand that he's Balaram personified, and Lord Chaitanya is Krishna, but it also describes how he manifests as Karanadakshay Vishnu expands, and how he's involved in the whole creation of the universe. And we find more about Lord Nityananda, especially in the Madhya Leela, when he appears. He comes comes down to Navadvip, and he joins Lord Chaitanya in the Sankirtan movement. He appeared in Ekachakra, and he was a few years earlier than Lord Chaitanya, and he was the apple of the eye of his parents, of course, Hadai Pandit and Padmavati. And he would he would play with his friends, and they would do this enact Krishna Leela. And his parents said, "Where did he learn all this?" They couldn't understand. They didn't, he was his beloved son, and he was always playing this Krishna Leela, and also Ram Leela. And it was so realistic. One time he was taking the role of Lakshman, I believe. And if you remember, Lakshman was injured, and then Hanuman had to go and get some herbs, and he didn't know which herb to pick. He took the whole mountain. Remember that? So Lord Nityananda, he was playing Lakshman, and he was injured, and he was so realistic that his friends, he wouldn't wake up. And he wouldn't get up, and they started to panic. And Hadai Pandit and his mother came, and they were all, very upset. What's happened to our little Nitai? And so it turns out that he was waiting for someone, Hanuman, to go and pull, get the mountain and bring back the herbs. And so when someone realized, he's waiting for that, he came and he got up. So he went these many pastimes in his youth, very ecstatic and attractive. And then one day a sannyasi came, and of course his father was very pious, and he greeted him and offered him, prasadam, place to rest. And then when he was getting ready to leave, he begged some charity from him, and Hadai said, "Yes, whatever you want." He said, "I need an assistant, so please let me have your son, to take with me on my travels." So it was like an arrow entering into the heart of Hadai Pandit and his mother, but he had given his word, so off went Nityananda with this mendicant. And he kept going to different holy places, just like you remember Balaram. He also went on pilgrimage all over the holy places, and so Nityananda did the same thing. And eventually he came to Vrindavan, and he stayed there. And in his travels he also met Madhavendra Puri, and there was a beautiful description of that, wonderful ecstatic days they spent in sharing Krishna Katha, and very ecstatic. And then he came to Vrindavan, and he stayed. And he was waiting, actually, for Lord Chaitanya to manifest his Sankirtan movement in Navadvip. And when he consulted some seer, and he said, "Yes, the Lord has appeared in Navadvip," and then he came down and he joined them there. So what I'd like to focus on is this pastime of Jagai and Madai, which is so important for us and for the whole world, because it shows Lord Nityananda's unlimited mercy and tolerance, and his willingness to approach the most fallen members of this age, which includes us. Srila Prabhupada would often say, "Lord Chaitanya saved 2 Jagai and Madais, but I'm saving thousands of Jagai and Madais." He was preaching to the same quality of person who had been very much fallen. So I'm going to refer to the Chaitanya Bhagavat here. And what happened was that Lord Chaitanya, he had his 2 main agents there in Navadvip at the time for preaching, and he gave Dravida Thakur and Nityananda the order to go around to every home in Navadvip and to give them a simple order. Says, Bhajo Krishna, Bolo Krishna, Bhajo Krishna, Karo Krishna Shika. This was the formula. And I put it into a little verse. Just chant Shri Krishna's name and worship him with all your heart. Follow his instructions, and to others them impart. And you can see this is practically the foundation of the Krishna consciousness movement. So they started wandering and going to different houses, and Lord Chaitanya wanted a report after each day. So they would go and they would simply ask people to do that, chant Krishna's name, worship Krishna, follow his instructions. And many of the pious people, they were Vaishnavas, and they, said, yes, we will do. There were those who were opponents, who were smarta Brahmins. They weren't exactly Vaishnavas, and they saw them as maybe they're spies, maybe they're thieves. They were casing out the place and everything, so they didn't get a warm reception everywhere. So in the course of their preaching, eventually they saw these two figures, and they were intoxicated. And they were berating everybody who they saw on the street. It describes here in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, they would just randomly punch people, and they wanted to know, who are these two? Said, they were born in high Brahmin family. They're Brahmins by birth, but from childhood they've been performing every sinful activity you can imagine, And they did all these offenses except one thing: they never blasphemed Vaishnavas. This was their saving grace. But so Nityananda immediately thought, these are great candidates for Lord Chaitanya's mercy. And if he will deliver them, then my Lord will be greatly glorified. So he gave them the instruction from a little distance, Bolo Krishna, Bhadra Krishna, Koro Krishna Shiksha. Immediately they became enraged, and they started berating Haridas Thakur and Nityananda, and they started coming after them. So Nityananda and Haridas ran. And Haridas was a little older, and he was thinking, I'm going to get caught, and they were having an argument. And see, because of your foolishness, now I'm going to get. So Nityananda was laughing. Said, we'll get away. So because they were so intoxicated, eventually they fell over. They couldn't catch them, and they started fighting with each other. They would do that also, pull each other's hair, and so they came back and they related that pastime. And then, I don't know if it was the next day or shortly thereafter, they encountered them again. And Nityananda again said, well, let me have a shot, let me try. So he gave them the instruction. And Madai, this time, there was a little shard of a pot, a broken pot. And he threw it at Nityananda, and it cut his head. And he was bleeding profusely. It describes his whole body was covered with blood. But after all of that, he said, it doesn't matter, it doesn't hurt very much, please chant the holy name. And Madai was about to throw another pot at him when Jagai came to his senses. They were after all born Brahmins, and he held his hand and said, what are you doing? He's a saintly person, Stop. So by this time, Lord Chaitanya had heard of what had happened, and he was furious. Nitai has been injured, so he came to the spot in the street, and he had his discus, and Jagai Mata could see it. I don't know if everyone could see it, but he was furious. And he was about to cut off their heads when Nityananda stopped him. He said, no, wait, this Jagai, he's saved me. He says, Jagai has saved you? And he immediately gave him a big hug. And he imparted prema bhakti into this Jagai from the most fallen dacoit. He suddenly was filled with Krishna prema, and he bowed down, he was crying, and the offering was obeisance. Now Madai, he hadn't been, given that blessing, but he saw this is a good way maybe to avoid getting killed, so he also wanted to surrender, but Lord Chaitanya said, no, you have to get the mercy of Lord Nityananda. And so Nityananda said, yes, I forgive you for everything. And he also became infused with prema bhakti. And Lord Chaitanya said, you're purified now, but don't do any more of these sinful activities. And they offered these wonderful prayers, and they were actually completely purified. They became Bhakta devotees. And Lord Chaitanya told all his other associates, who were by now gathered around, now you accept them as part of our group, the pure devotees. Their sins are all forgiven, and they're purified. And this. So this pastime is very significant for us because it shows, first of all, Lord Nityananda's limitless compassion for the fallen people of this age. And we understand from Srila Prabhupada's writings, first of all, that Balaram, he's none different from Balaram. He's an incarnation of Balaram, just as Lord Chaitanya is an incarnation of Krishna. And just as Prabhupada explains in the Krishna book and other places, how Balaram, he gives the strength, the spiritual strength, to practice devotional service. And so he is the principle of the Guru, the spiritual master. We really can't make any advancement unless we surrender to pure devotee. And we follow his instructions and we surrender. So Balaram gives that strength. That's one of the meanings, the internal or secret meanings of his name. Bala is the spiritual strength. Of course, he's very powerful in all ways, but that he gives the spiritual strength, the Shakti, to practice devotional service and to advance and become purified. So Lord Nityananda is Balaram, and later we're going to sing this Nityanandastakam, which describes Nityananda as the root of the bhakti tree. O friends entrapped in Kali's clutches, yearning to break free, just worship Nityananda Ram, the root of the bhakti tree. And Srila Prabhupada explains in one purport, which I'd like to read now, just a short purport. In the 7th canto, let's see, got all this, okay. Yes. So this is a passage in the 15th chapter of the 7th canto. Narada Muni is giving instructions to King Yudhishthira. And he's describing how there are so many impediments in our conditioned state, so many impurities, so many obstacles to pure life. And these have to be overcome. And to overcome them, we need the mercy of Krishna and Balaram, both. And Prabhupada makes it clear that Krishna and Balaram are Gaur and Nitai in this purport. So he describes, if one does not take shelter of Achyuta and Baladev, Krishna and Balaram, then the senses acting as horses and the intelligence acting as the driver, both being prone to material contamination. This is text 46 of the 15th chapter, 7th canto. So the mind, the senses and the intelligence being prone to material contamination, inattentively bring the body, which acts as the chariot, to the path of sense gratification. We've seen this illustration in the Bhagavad Gita, where the body is the chariot, the mind is the driving instrument, the mind is the reins, the horses, the 5 horses are the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, and the intelligence is the driver. But when those senses become so powerful, they become unable to be controlled by the mind and the intelligence. And you have the lower self controlling the higher self. That's the problem. So to get the strength to control that lower self and direct the senses toward the activities of bhakti, Krishna consciousness, then it requires the mercy of Lord Balaram, and especially in this age, the mercy of both Gaur and Nitai. So he says, when one is then attracted by the rogues of the sense gratification, the horse's chariot driver is thrown into the blinding dark well of material existence, and one is again put into the dangerous, extremely fearful situation of repeated birth and death. So we've been in this situation, for instance, time immemorial. So in his purport, Prabhupada brings in this wonderful realization of Krishna Balaram and Nitai Gaur Nitai. Without the protection of Gaur Nitai, Krishna Balaram, one cannot get out of the dark well of ignorance in material existence. This is indicated here by the word nochait, which means that one will always remain in the dark well of material existence. The living entity must get strength from Nitai Gaur, or Gaur Nitai, Krishna Balaram. Without the mercy of Gaur Nitai, there is no way to come out of this dark well of ignorance, as stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Then he quotes the verse I mentioned at the beginning of this talk. Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Godo Dehe Pushpavanto Chitro Shando Tamonado. I offer my respectful obeisance to Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are like the sun and moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gauda to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. This material world is a dark well of ignorance. The fallen soul in this dark well must take shelter of the lotus feet of Gaur Nitai, for thus he can easily emerge from material existence. Without their strength, simply attempting to get out of the clutches of matter by speculative knowledge will be insufficient. So Srila Prabhupada has given us the opportunity to take shelter of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. The Sankirtan movement is moving. The movement is moving on the strength of their compassion, their mercy, and their pastimes and the instructions they gave. Lord Chaitanya, he carefully instructed Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and others, and they have, on the basis of Lord Chaitanya's words and his instructions, this whole movement has gone on. All of the followers accepting them and spreading the Sankirtan mission, the chanting of the holy names. So just Lord Nityananda is especially merciful, as we see in this pastime of Jagai and Madai. And there are some other amazing pastimes that you'll discover if you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita and also the Chaitanya Bhagavat. There's an interesting pastime because if you remember, these Jagai Madai were two Brahmins. They were fallen Brahmins, and he saved them. And there's another pastime where he saves some fallen Brahmins. And I like to just relate this. This is one of there's a lot of supernatural, amazing miracles that happen in relation to Nityananda. So he was sent, when Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, you may remember, there's a whole pastime there of Nityananda where he and Nityananda immediately started going to Vrindavan. They weren't sleeping, they weren't eating, they weren't anything, just chanting Hare Krishna and glorifying Krishna, and absorbed after Lord Chaitanya took sannyas. But Advaita Acharya and Nityananda and the others, he hasn't even had a chance, all the devotees in Navadvip haven't had a chance to say goodbye to, and his mother and everyone. Because he took sannyas at a distance, he didn't take it in Mayapur. So, Nityananda and Advaita conspired to bring him back to Shantipur so that all the devotees could have one last meeting with him and his mother could see him and everything. So he's going, he's in Radhadesh, which is the place where the Ganges doesn't flow. And then finally he came to the Ganges after some time. And Nityananda told some coward boys who were there, says, listen, if this sannyasi, he asks you where you are, tell him this is the Yamuna river. And then you come to Vrindavan. So Lord Chaitanya saw the river and he asked Nityananda, said, yes, we've come to Vrindavan, this is the Yamuna. And so Lord Chaitanya in his ecstasy, he couldn't tell the difference, and so he offered prayers to Yamuna and so forth. And then he went to bathe and he saw Advaita Acharya coming in a boat. And he said, what's all this about? How did you get to Vrindavan? And so Advaita says, famously, wherever you are, there is Vrindavan. This is a famous line. and then Lord Chaitanya, he said, this Nityananda, he's cheated me. He told me this was the Yamuna. And Nityananda said, no, actually it is, because look, see, if you know the map, the Ganges and the Yamuna flow together and they meet in Prayag, right? That's and of course the Saraswati is there. And then they keep flowing down as the Ganges. And so if you see that western part is still the Yamuna all the way down when you get into Radhadesh in Bengal. He was arguing that. Well, you still swam, you still bathed in the Yamuna. So Advaita said, whatever, please, here's some fresh clothes you can put on after, and come with me in the boat, and we're going to go to Shantipur, and you can, say goodbye to everybody. So he did, and there's this wonderful pastime where Advaita Acharya's wife was a wonderful cook, and she had prepared a beautiful feast. And Lord Chaitanya said, "Just give me some plain boiled vegetables, it's a sannyas, And so he said, just come and take prasad." And he had a big feast with all of them, and Nityananda's joking with Advaita. It's very endearing. So the more pastimes happened there had taken place, and now after the sannyas, Lord Chaitanya goes to Puri because his mother said, "Please make, don't go to Vrindavan, but make Puri your headquarters because it's fairly close. I'll get some news of you at least, So Lord Chaitanya said, "Of course, whatever you want." So when he after that incident, he immediately started for Puri, and was going there. And he had his companions. Nityananda was with him, Mukunda was with him, I think Gadadhar was with him, one or two others. And they're going, and they come to one river, and Lord Nityananda, he breaks the sannyas rod of Lord Chaitanya. He breaks into several pieces, throws it in the river. And when Lord Chaitanya came out of the bathing, he says, "Where's my sannyas rod?" You know? And Nityananda, they told him, says, "I entrusted it to you, and you've broken my rod. I'm not going to Puri with you. You go ahead of me, or I'll go ahead of you, you know, you decide." He pretended to be angry, you know. So he went ahead. Then when he came into finally came to the temple, he saw Jagannath, immediately fainted, went into samadhi, you know. And some of the guards there who were used to kind of, you know, the Sahajiyas coming in and faking symptoms, they were about to beat him when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya stopped him. He was in charge of the temple. No. This is for real, you know. And he checked, he wasn't breathing, he was a little panicky, and he took a little cotton, put it by his nose, and there was a slight movement. So he was in this high samadhi, you know. Anyway, it's a long story, and he took him home. And finally, Nityananda and the others arrived, and they, you know, where is he? There's a sannyasi coming. Yes, he was taken to the home of Svabhama. So they started chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, and eventually he came out of his consciousness. That happened again and again. So Lord Nityananda, he stayed with him in Puri for some time. And they had the Rathayatras would come, the devotees would come from Bengal. But then one day Lord Chaitanya said, "I want you to go to Bengal and preach." Nityananda said, "No, I want to stay with you." He said, "No, it's your duty. You know, I can't go there because I promised my brother I'd stay here. So I can't preach there, but there's so many potential Vaishnavas there, or the Vaishnavas need to have encouragement." So Nityananda agreed. "Okay, I'm going." So he had his personal associates. You know, they're all coward boys because in their original identity. And so he left with them, and they had a procession, but all they did was Harinam. They were just doing Harinam. They weren't wondering where they were going. And eventually they would ask directions, "Which is the way to Nadia?" Said, "Oh, you're 20 miles out of the way. You know, you have to go back this way." And they would go for a while in each day. And doing all this Harinam, they would come to a town, and all the people would start chanting. And it got to be such, that was all that was going on. And I swear, I was amazed when I read this. The people all became infused with the Shakti, Prema Shakti of Nityananda. It says wherever he would glance, he would infuse whoever he saw with Prema Bhakti. And nobody was eating, nobody was sleeping. It describes how people, they were just, in their ecstasy, they were uprooting trees. And even children were uprooting trees. Have you ever read that? I was amazed to see this. And it was going on like that. And finally he comes down makes it to Bengal and Nadia. So this brings us to the second incident where he saved these Brahmins, fallen Brahmins. So he was staying at one devotee's house, and they were doing Harinam all the time. And there was one form of Brahmin. He was born as a Brahmin, but he had become a dacoit and a thief and a murderer, And he had a band, and they would, rob pilgrims and things like that. So he saw Lord Nityananda was often, even though he's in Buddha of sannyas, he was decorated, because Avadhuta, he's not following any rules that strictly. He had all these jewels on and wonderful decorations and, golden and ankle bells and silver. And said, "Oh, we can rob him, there must be worth thousands and thousands of rupees." So he got his dacoits together. He said, "Okay, we're going to, the plan is we'll, attack them in the evening at this house where he's staying." So the first night they get there a little early, and so the night has not yet fallen, and so the night comes, and they take a nap, all of them. There's a band of them. And they don't wake up till morning. So what happened? We wasted the whole night. And they start accusing each other. "You fell asleep." "No, you didn't wake me up." They would be beating each other. And the leader says, don't worry. It's just a small postponement. So the next night or a few nights later, they come back. They have their weapons, their swords and clubs, whatever they're going to use. And this time they see, all this kirtan's going on, and they see all these guards, these powerfully built, guards around the house, effulgent, chanting Hare Krishna, and they have their swords or weapons with them, guarding the place. They say, whoa, where do these fellas come from? He must have some connection with the king or something. He got some guards. But it's just a temporary thing. We'll come back again in a few days. So they come back again in a few days, and they're all ready to go. And it's nighttime, and suddenly they can't see anything. It's so dark, they can't see a thing. And they start falling into a ditch here and there, and bumping into things, getting injured. Then the rain starts, a big pouring rain, it's cold and rain, they can't see, they're suffering like anything. And finally, this former Brahmin, the leader of them all, he wakes up, and he realizes, oh, this must be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's chastened. And somehow they survived that. The next morning he goes to to Lord Nityananda and surrenders. He says, we thought you were, somebody ordinary, but now I realize you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Please. And he offered these wonderful prayers. And Nityananda accepts him. He says, but don't do it again. And you go and make all of your Dacoit associates into devotees also, which he does, And it just shows the power of Lord Nityananda. And there's so many other pastimes like that where he's by his ecstasy, by his Shakti, he's saving the most fallen people of this age. And this is exactly what's needed in this world, you see. We're so far away from Vedic culture. And we can see how Srila Prabhupada was following exactly in those footsteps. When he left India in 1965 and got on that boat, elderly gentleman, he was empowered by the order of his spiritual master and the prediction of Lord Chaitanya, Pritivitti Yachayat Nadaragri Gram Sarvata Pracharhave Moranam, that in every town and village of this world, not just India, Pritivitti means on the whole earth, my name will be chanted. This is Lord Chaitanya's prediction. But it wasn't happening. Lord Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had sent some devotees to England, but they didn't accomplish much. And many thought, how could it possibly be? We can't even think of going to the land of the Mlechas and Yavanas like America, But Prabhupada, he took it upon himself and underwent so many austerities and difficulties. But he had full faith in his order of his spiritual master, the prediction of Lord Chaitanya, and the holy name. And this is the essence of Lord Nityananda's mercy, is you simply chant the name, the Hare Krishna mantra, and Prabhupada taught us in the Adi Leela and the Panchatattva mantra. In the chanting of Hare Krishna, there's so many offenses, but there's no offenses chanting Panchatattva mantra. And by chanting the names of the Sri Chaitanya, by Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita, Gadadhar, Shivas, Adigaur, Bhaktavrinda. And all of these personalities are so nicely described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita and the Chaitanya Bhagavat. And then you get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. And you can give up the offenses to the chanting of the Hare Krishna. It's very essential that we have both of those when we chant. And so this is a very auspicious day, the appearance of Lord Nityananda, and we can pray to him to give us the mercy. Please give us the power to give up our offenses, to advance in devotional service, take full shelter of Lord Chaitanya and himself, and thereby, as Prabhupada says in another passage, actually in the purport to the song Nitaipada Kamala, very wonderful purport, I won't read the whole thing, Vrindavan Prabhu read it this morning in class. And Prabhupada says the purpose of this movement is to allow us to approach Radha and Krishna. And that's only possible when we get the mercy of Lord Nityananda. And that's possible when we take up the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra seriously and try to give it to others. Try to preach, try to increase the number of devotees. Give what we've been given. Such a boon. When you read Srila Prabhupada's books and you read the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam and the other books he's given, you suddenly realize the purpose of human life. that there's nothing here on the material plane that can really provide us any ultimate good, any ultimate happiness, or any ultimate security. It's all a big illusion that you can find happiness simply on the bodily plane and on the mental or intellectual plane. This is a very important realization, because our conditioning is largely in this focus on trying to adjust our material situation to become happy, but it's impossible. And so that understanding is coming because Srila Prabhupada worked so hard producing these books, translating, and personifying the teachings of the books himself, giving us an example, and creating a society where we could become purified and ourselves also become conduits or media, as Prabhupada said, via medium, for this knowledge and for this. It's the only hope for the world, actually, the only hope that can bring any sanity to this mad Kali Yuga that we're living in. So this is a very auspicious day in which we celebrate the appearance of Lord Nityananda, and we can chant his name, we can read about him, and we can pray and surrender and reaffirm our relationship with him through the simple process of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, Sankirtan, and trying to imbibe the teachings Srila Prabhupada gave us and follow those instructions strictly. And if you read the wonderful descriptions, Chaitanya Charitamrita and the Chaitanya Bhagavat, of how ecstatic they were. Lord Chaitanya, when he was preaching in South India, his method of preaching was just chanting and dancing, and whoever would hear him chant, they would also become ecstatic. They would become prema bhaktis. They go back home to their home villages, and then whoever met them, it was almost like a positive pandemic. Everyone was getting infected with this prema bhakti, and that's the power that we've been given. And it's the only hope for us. We can't study the Vedanta Sutras separately, practice the Ashtanga Yoga. I mean, we are given this great process. There's a verse in the 11th canto, right after the verse predicting Lord Chaitanya's advent, Krishna Varnam Trisha Krishnam Sangopangastaparshadam Yengya Sankatana Prayajanti Sumedasa, that in this age, the avatar will be chanting the holy name of Krishna, Krishna Varnam, Trisha Krishnam, but he won't be blackish like Krishna, he'll have the golden complexion. And he'll be with his associates, with his very intimate associates like Lim, Saanga, Upaanga, Astra, and with his weapons. What is his weapons? You see, Lord Chaitanya is on the altar with Lord Nityananda, their hands are open like this. But the weapon is the holy name, not to kill the demons, but to kill the demonic mentality that we're all harboring in our hearts. And Parshadam is intimate associates. Yagya Sankana Prayaya Jantihi Sumedasa. Those who are truly intelligent, Sumedasa, will worship this avatar by Harinam Sankirtan. And a few verses later is very interesting, because we live in Kali Yuga, and we know from the beginning of the Bhagavatam, and just by living in this Kali Yuga, how difficult it is to practice yoga. You don't live very long, it's described. You're misguided, unlucky, always disturbed. So what are we going to do? But it says there that those who are kaling sabhajiyantyaya gunagya sarabhaginaha yatta sankirtanenaiva sarvasvarto bilabhyate. That those who are truly Aryans and who know the essence of things, they worship this Kali Yuga. Sabhajiyantyaya, kaling this age. Why? Because just by Harinam Sankirtan, Sankirtanenaiva sarvasvarto bilabhyate, you will attain all of the goals of the soul. Sva-artha. Not these bahirartha, Prahlad Maharaj mentions in his teachings to his father. External goals that ultimately are taken away from you. You can't hold on to them. They're material. But the goal of the soul is to reestablish its relationship with Krishna, with God, and to go back to Godhead, no more to roam in this realm of Maya. So that can be attained by the Harinam Sankirtan, and that is the blessing of Gauranitai. That is the method that is giving, the chief method. Everything follows from that. So we should continue to practice it and more sincerely try to give up the offenses. Pray to Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya for their mercy, and celebrate their wonderful appearance days, which just about a month will be celebrating Gaur Purnima, Lord Chaitanya's advent also. So, if there's no comments or questions, yes, Maharaj, please. Okay, can we get the mic and activate it, or maybe not? Oh, we have the mic there. You have the mic? No, it's there. Because the people there, they're listening. Yeah, they'll be.
Yeah, 2 questions.
Sure, Maharaj.
Why did Lord Nityananda? Good if you turn it on before. Otherwise, more fumbling. Why did Lord Nityananda break Lord Chaitanya's danda? And why were the people uprooting trees in their ecstasy?
Yeah. Well, the breaking of the danda is what I read is that he recognized that Lord Chaitanya is beyond all of this official business of being a sannyasi. In other words, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he's way beyond the Paramahamsa stage. And we learn, that at the Paramahamsa stage, you don't really need to carry the danda, right? We saw Prabhupada would sometimes have the danda, but mostly he didn't need it. So there's those 2 reasons, is that he was making a statement that this Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself. He's beyond all of this, and so he wanted to do that. And he's abadut, so he does things against the rules sometimes. As far as the uprooting the trees, I don't recall reading of why they did that.
I appreciate your other answer very much, Bob.
Yeah, okay. I really don't want to speculate. I have to look. Be honest with you, I read the pastime, but I haven't looked at all the commentary by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which may. I'll let you know. Yes. Go ahead.
Now, once again.
Yeah, please. We need a runner. Stand by, Robbie, in case someone else has a. Yeah.
The pastime of the dacoits being blessed by Nityananda Prabhu.
Yeah.
How do we understand that? When you were talking about it, I was thinking of Ajamila's pastime, but even there, he called out Narayana, but here you didn't mention anything like that. Like, how do we understand this? I mean, I understand, yes.
Okay. You hold on to that in case we need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause you don't need it anymore, so give it to him. It reminds me of another pastime Prabhupada tells on a lecture, where again it's a thief. He's listening to Bhagavatam reading in a city or a town some distance from Vrindavan, and he's a thief, but he has some curiosity about this telling of Bhagavatam, and the Bhagavatam reader, he's describing baby Krishna in Vrindavan. How his mother would dress him with all these ornaments, and he would play out in the forest, he would be dressed, with all again, the same thing. And so he was thinking, let me go to Vrindavan. I can plunder this child, And Prabhupada says, and he was serious. And so he goes to Vrindavan, and he goes out into the forest, and he's calling the name Krishna. And Prabhupada says, and his qualification is he really wanted to, have Krishna's association, to rob him, but he was really anxious, so he's calling, and finally Krishna appears, little boy, That's the way Prabhupada tells the story. And so he says, he wasn't going to harm him, he wasn't like that, he couldn't have, of course, but that wasn't his purpose. He wanted to just charm him, and this way he would, you're looking very nice, please give me your ornaments, And Prabhupada says, no, my mother will be very upset. Like that. My mother will be upset. So again, he's cajoling, and Prabhupada says, by his association, he was getting purified. Just by interacting, even on that, that motive wasn't pure. But after a few minutes of this interaction, he was becoming purified, and eventually, he was pure. He gave up his motive, and he just surrendered, and he became a pure devotee. It's almost similar to, in one sense, Dhruva, who went out, and his motive was completely material. I want to have a kingdom greater than not just my father, but my great-great-grandfather, who happened to be Brahma. That was it was like childish, But he was determined. Dhruva, that's what the name Dhruva means. It's fixed. So he, you know the story, many of you know, maybe you don't know all the story, that he met Narada Muni, saw him, and he said, he's a good candidate, So first he tested him and said, you're too young, go back, in a few years I'll teach you. So thank you, O sage, but if you can't really tell me, then I'm going anyway. So he said, okay. So he taught him a type of yoga that was suitable for the age, which is Satya Yoga, way back at the beginning of the universe. And a lot of meditation, austerity, but he also taught him a rudimentary deity worship. You can do that. He's in Mahavan, he's in Vrindavan, and you can take some mud and make a little deity, worship it, and then plus chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya and meditating on the Lord in the heart. And meanwhile performing these extraordinary austerities. So, by his meditation on Krishna, through the holy name, Om Namo, and everything, eventually he lost that desire and he wanted to, pure bhakti. And when Vishnu came down to stop because he was breathing slower and slower, and he had entrained the whole universal breathing, and all of the demigods could hardly breathe. They all had COVID or something. It was like they could hardly breathe. And so they appealed to the Lord, please do something. So he comes down on Garuda, and Dhruva sees him, and he surrenders, Sraman Katato Srinavangnayache. I don't want anything else. Now I have your, darshan. So somehow or other, this is Prabhupada quotes this from Rupa Goswami. Yena kena upa yena mana Krishna deveshe. This is how he would quote the verse. It's a verse from 7th Canto, which basically means somehow or other, fix your mind on Krishna. It can be in enmity, it can be in love, it can be in friendship, or it can be in greed, to steal, but somebody fixed your mind on Krishna. So they had fixed their mind on Nityananda, who's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so he didn't kill them, he just did something to keep them coming back, so that they would keep meditating on him. So this worked on the leader. The others and were less advanced, and then he was able to bring them all in. So it's a trick to bring us into the association or have us fix the mind on Krishna. And Prabhupada would do that sometimes. It wasn't exactly a trick, but the strategy of the prasadam distribution, the Sunday feast, it was all prasadam, it's transcendental. But many people would come just for the prasadam. But they would hear the holy name and they would get the association, and many people became devotees just by that. Shri Shri Gauranatai ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna ki jai, Radha Giridhari, and Jagannath Baladev Subhadraji ki jai. So if you allow me, I'd like to end with this Nityanandastakam which I've prepared. This is 8 verses about Nityananda, written by Vrindavan Das Thakur. And actually, if you Google it, you'll find many renditions online. It's been recorded quite a lot. So I'm just going to segue over here, if you will. Okay. Hare Krishna. So this is participatory, if possible. There's a line that I chanted before. You can come in on that, and we'll have a little Hare Krishna in between slides, and then we'll wind up that way. Okay. So you probably won't be able to do the Sanskrit, so just stand by. Sarac Candra Bhrantim Spuradamalakantim Kajakatim Hare Premon Mattam Jutapadam Sattvam Smitumukham Sadagunanetram Kadakalita Vetram Kalibadam Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajanata Dukandam Nidavadi. Beside the splendor of his golden form and smiling face, the splendor of the autumn moon appears most commonplace. Because he's mad with love of God, though he's God in disguise, he walks just like a drunken elephant and rolls his eyes. The cowherd's rod he carries is his weapon to destroy. whatever ills and evils wicked Kali can deploy. Oh friends entrapped in Kali's clutches, yearning to break free, just worship Nityananda around the root of the bhakti tree. Yeah, stand over here so you're not blocking. Just stand over. Please. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Go ahead. Belt it out. Hare Ram, Ram, Hare. Rasanamagaram Swajanagana Sarvasumatalam Tadeyaka Pranam Pramadavasudajanapapatim Sada Premon Madam Padamavadita Mandamanasam Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajanata Dukandam Nidavadi. Unequaled in his love for Krishna, he's a vast abode of transcendental mellows only God has ever showed. For all his devotees he's everything, and for his wives Shri Vasudha and Janava he is their very lives. Since love for Krishna makes him mad, his actions may seem odd, and so the foolish fail to see that he himself is God. Oh friends entrapped in Kali's clutches, yearning to break free, just worship Nityananda on the root of the bhakti tree. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram. Shachi Sunu Preshtam Nikalacha Gadishtam Sukamayam Kalal Manjaj Jivo Dananakadano Damakadunam Hare Rakyanadva Bhavajalatika Vonatiharam Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajanata Dukandam Nidavadi. Most dear to Shati's son, he is a reservoir of bliss. Throughout the universe he's worshipped with great happiness. Impelled by deep compassion when he sees the state they're in, he saves the people sinking fast in Kali's sea of sin, by teaching them to chant the holy name with every breath, thus crushing the conceit of Durga's sea of birth and death. Oh friends entrapped in Kali's clutches, yearning to break free, just worship Nityananda on the root of the bhakti tree. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. Hare Bratra Ninam Kalikalushanam Kinnabhavita Tata Prayashchitam Vachiyadanaya Sitahime Vajanti Tvanitam Saha Bhagavata Mantriyati Om Bhaje Nityanandam Bhaje Nityanandam, Bhaje Nityanandam, Bhajanata Dukandam Nidavadi. He said, oh brother, Kali is now ascendant everywhere, increasing people's suffering, it's more than I can bear. Please give these fallen souls an easy process to attain the shelter of your lotus feet, the place beyond all pain. Instruct them all to chant Shri Krishna's name, the Lord replied, to worship him with love and by his teachings to abide. O friends entrapped in Kali's clutches, yearning to break free, just worship Nityananda on the root of the bhakti tree. Yasheshtam me brata Kuru Hare Hare Dvan Manisham Toto Vaksang Saram Buddhitadhanadayo Mihilagid Hiram Bahu Spota Atativatayan Yak Patigaham Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajanata Dukandam Niravadi. Oh friends, please chant the Hare Krishna mantra constantly, and also teach this process to your friends and family. Let's cross the sea of birth and death and be supremely blessed. Your liberation is the only alms that I request. Entreating thus to save the people from illusion's thrall, with arms upraised he went to every home throughout Bengal. Oh friends entrapped in Kali's clutches, yearning to break free, just worship Nityananda Ram, the root of the bhakti tree. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram. And balat samsarambo nidihadana kumbho davamaho satam shreyak sindhu natikumada bandhum samuditam kalashre nispujit timadahara soya pabamaham bhaje nityanandam bhajanata dukhandam nidavadi. A new Agastya Muni, with great force he drinks the sea of birth and death. How loving and compassionate is he! For all his devotees he is the best of rising moons, expanding wide the ocean full of transcendental boons. And for the many demons filling people's hearts with dread, he is the sun dispelling all the darkness that they spread. Oh friends entrapped in Kali's clutches, yearning to break free, just worship Nityananda Ram, the root of the bhakti tree. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Hey natantam gayantam, hanamana vadantam patipati, vadantam pashyantam, swamapi nadayantam chanaganam, pakovantam santam, sakadun digantam pakalanat, bhade nityanandam, bhajanata dukhandam nidavadi. He wandered every path in Bengal chanting Hari Bol, his dancing and his singing bringing joy to every soul. He put aside his own concerns to spread the holy name, thus mercifully fulfilling Sri Chaitanya's preaching aim. On seeing saintly devotees he felt great happiness, and with his mercy-laden glance he filled their hearts with bliss. Oh friends entrapped in Kali's clutches, yearning to break free, just worship Nityananda Ram, the root of the bhakti tree. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. And Subhimbranam Bhratu Karasadasajam Komalatodam Mito Bhaktra Loko Charatapadananda Vidiyam Brahmantam Madhuya Ahamadantam Purajanam Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajanata Dukhandam Nidavadi. He gently took his brother's soft and graceful lotus hand, and as he looked upon his face, he felt his bliss expand. Chaitanya felt the same way as he looked upon the face of Nityananda, and he held him in a firm embrace. And then they started dancing through the streets of all the towns, their beauty filling every heart with joy that knew no bounds. Oh friends entrapped in Kali's clutches, yearning to break free, just worship Nityananda Ram, the root of the bhakti tree. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Vasanamadaram, Vasakafara Sadhan Vaishnavadhanam, Vasagaram Saram, Bhatitataram Smaranata, Param Nityanandastakam Nidam Apruvam Patatiya, Tadangvidvan Rajam, Spudatanatadantasya Vidaye. For Nityananda's devotees who relish mellow sweet, this poem is a precious nectar reservoir replete with endless waves and whirlpools of the sweetest, deepest love, beyond what even gods and goddesses are dreaming of. It has the power to deliver any fallen soul and place him at Sri Nityananda's feet, our final goal. May those who read these transcendental verses I impart forever see his lovely lotus feet within their heart. Oh, friends entrapped in Kali's clutches, yearning to break free, just worship Nityananda, the root of the bhakti tree. Just worship Nityananda, the root of the bhakti tree. Hare Krishna. And that concludes our presentation tonight. Thank you all. I'm sorry?
Who was that written by?
Vrindavan Das Thakur. Yeah. Shri Gauranta ki jai. Nityananda Ram ki jai.